The second technique we'll use in our mobility practice is stretching. So let's define it a little bit. Well, stretching is when we take a joint to its end range of motion and then challenge that range of motion further. By doing so, we make the muscles that act on that joint more elastic, and that leads to long-term increases in flexibility, and ultimately we regain range of motion within that joint. So when we talk about foam rolling, it's more about enhancing tissue quality, getting muscles to kind of release, getting rid of some knots, and reintroducing circulation. When we talk about stretching, it's more about range of motion and flexibility. Why does that matter? Well, as we talked about earlier, when we have a muscle that is inextensible, well, it reduces the range of motion of the joint it acts on. Well, with reduced range of motion, our body is forced to compensate with other joints near that dysfunctional joint, which ultimately creates wear and tear on those compensated joints, which is the main mechanism of musculoskeletal pain and wearing in the body. So by stretching and reintroducing range of motion, we will need to compensate less. There will be less pain due to that. Number two, when a muscle shortens up, it compresses the joint that it acts on. Simply put, the joint surfaces are put under more pressure. You take that joint through a range of motion, and over time with that compression, it's going to start wearing down on those surfaces a little bit more. By getting that muscle to loosen up, we reduce some of the compression in that joint, and over time that's going to create less wear. So that's the idea behind stretching. We're going to reduce compensation by regaining range of motion. We're also going to take some of the compression and imbalances out of our joints. That's the idea. So where are we going to use stretching in our mobility practice? Well, that's a great question. Stretching is our second most utilitarian tool to foam rolling. So we will use stretching for pain resolution, daily positional maintenance, and then number three, performance. We kind of already talked about the first two, so let's talk just a little bit about performance. Well, when we stretch and regain some range of motion before a physical task, it's going to allow us to more competently achieve or accomplish that physical task without compensation. Essentially, we're going to be able to go work out, exercise, go for a hike, whatever physical task it is, we're going to be able to do that without compensating, without wearing on those accessory joints. So that's the idea. We'll use it for pain resolution, daily positional maintenance, and some performance benefits. Now, finally, what tools in our UltiMOB kit are we going to use? Well, surprise, surprise, dun, dun, dun. The first tool we'll use is our stretch strap. Our stretch strap acts as an inextensible assister to many of the stretches we'll do, allowing us to get better positions and pressure in a given stretch. The second tool we'll use is our monster band. The monster band essentially does the same thing, but since it's a little bit more extensible, it's more forgiving. So for some of us that are a little gummed up, or we see that one of these stretches is a little too intense, the monster band might be a good substitution for the stretch strap. Now that you understand stretching at kind of a higher level, I ask you to please go below for the step-by-step schema that we'll use to apply stretching all over our body. Eventually, we can apply that schema to the specific mobility sequences below.